Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, today joined by somebody who loves to apparently go at my parenting on Twitter.
Look, here at SB Nation and Silver Screen and Roll, we pride ourselves on covering all of the stories, surrounding your favorite local sports team and the ecosystem around it. And I think it's notable if a noted local podcaster is screaming obscenities at his less than 1-year-old son.
All right, so before that gets taken out of context, he can't hear me screaming those obscenities, and he won't take a nap.
Crying right after. I don't know. Maybe
every single parent. Every single parent listening to this will be able to relate, but there is nothing worse than a child who needs a nap and refuses to nap. Well, maybe not nothing, but there are very few worse things than that as a parent. And yeah, this little asshole. All right.
All right, well, see, now it's not out of context. Okay, so
I before we move on. For those of you watching on YouTube, which, by the way, youtube.com/@LakersLounge is where you can find us. Before I move on, I have a very important thing that I need to do here. I haven't been able to pay my respects quite yet to the newly retired legend, Lakers legend, that is Carmelo Anthony. And,
oh wow, you're going to do the whole show in a hoodie.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have. It's funny. This is why we are meant to podcast together. This is also, I guess, just for the YouTube audience, although it is carrying over from a podcast bit. I know Mello was a big fan of extravagant hats and unique fashion. And so I decided to get out the Lakers fedora, to pay my own tribute to Lakers era Mello.
I just can't. I can't lose that thing.
Nope, it's still here.
All right, I'm going to be in Southern California in late August or so. And one of my goals, one of the boxes that I have to check while I'm there is getting rid of that goddamn hat.
No, this is a collector's item. I'm never getting rid of this thing.
We should really have if you ever get so big that we can just give away stuff to charity or give away money to charity. We should sell that hat in the name of charity, and somebody can buy it.
If this hat would ever sell for more than $100 for charity, I would sell it.
We need to find out now.
Yeah,
we need to.
So
put
if you,
that
a
up
listener,
there.
are willing to donate, $100 or more to a charity of, I guess your choice. I don't know. No, of my choice.
No.
I'm going to decide. Not of your choice. I'm going to decide what is considered a charity. Then I will sell you the vaunted Harrison Fagan Lakers podcast fedora.
You narrowly avoided one of the worst things.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that would have been a mistake. Potentially. I actually, no, I think our listeners actually, I have more faith in our listeners than you. I think they would donate to a charity we agree with.
Me too, but you do not want to open yourself up to that possibility.
I get it. Yeah, you don't want to chance it.
All right. All right. There's no way to segue out of that.
Yeah, no.
None whatsoever.
Speaking of charity, I am also here to defend, Anthony Davis today out of the goodness of my own heart.
Yeah. We are, you guys tend to really enjoy these kinds of conversations when we have the definitive conversation about X, right? And what this means is from this point forward, there is no point whatsoever in anybody out there having a conversation, in this case, about Anthony Davis. None whatsoever. If you have another conversation about Anthony Davis after this, Ben Rosales is going to send you a strongly,
our legal team. Sorry,
strongly written letter from Ben Rosales.
I'm going to get a form letter just now so that we can sue ESPN for this when they violate it tomorrow.
Speaking of ESPN, this is actually why I wanted to have this conversation. I'm just going to play the clip. So let's go over here. This is from, I believe, one of the ESPN.
I think it was Get Up.
Which used to have an exclamation mark. Now it doesn't have an exclamation mark, but here we go.
This is supposed to be a serious sports show.
Yeah, like what?
Every discussion about Anthony Davis and whether he's got the dog in him and whether he wants the ball enough should
This is Zach
start.
Lowe speaking right
the
now, by the way.
headline should be, he has been the most dominant defensive player in the entire playoffs. Nobody wants to talk about defense.
Preach,
Everyone
Zach,
just wants to
preach.
talk about where's the post moves, where's the ball. Every Lakers series, plot point number one for the other team has been, where is Anthony Davis on defense? Who is he guarding? How can we get him away from the basket? Because we are terrified of going anywhere near it. Every single.
Why does it sound like they're recording this in the
We're doing it
cathedral?
again.
No. That's not an excuse.
Zach, you made him Ben Wallace. He's Ben Wallace now. That's what.
Ben Wallace never scored 21 points in a conference finals game and 40 points in a different
He
conference.
brings defense. That's what he brings.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to be a basketball show.
I don't know
and
who
we're
that
just
like
gonna
head of
say,
hair is. I
defense
don't know
doesn't
who the
matter.
other voice is. To be completely honest, I probably should know who the other person is who made that comment in retort to Zach, but
because he doesn't dominate the
he
ball.
also
He
just
dominated
says so
the
many
ball.
dumb
Look at the
things here.
top
I'm cool
25
not knowing
scorers
his
in the
name.
NBA. 3 are centers. Anthony Davis, Joel
The man had
Embiid,
a
and
40
Nikola
piece in the first
Jokic.
game of the
Those two other
series.
guys are built different offensively than Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has never been to his fault.
All right, that is enough of that clip. So again, that is from ESPN and Get Up specifically, as Zach Lowe makes a case in Anthony Davis's defense about his defense, right? About the impact that he has on that side of the court. And this has been something that, frankly, it's so stupid how we do this, right? Football, we really care about defensive players, right? You have your icons and legends on that side of the ball, right? The Ray Lewises, the Richard Shermans, I'm a Vikings fan. We have Harrison Smith as our safety who just really impacts everything. And
Lawrence Taylor,
like
he was good, right?
yeah, Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah,
like you could go through the ranks. Aaron Donald, for those of you you LA fans, right? Another AD who is stellar on defense, and like in football, we acknowledge that side of the field, that side of the ball, how important that being good on that side is, right? One of the oldest cliches in all of sports is defense wins championships, right? Like the notion that if you compete on that side of the ball, you are putting yourself in a better predicament or you're going to give yourself a better opportunity at winning a championship than those teams that hope to just outscore everybody. And yet for some reason with basketball, we just don't care. Like the sixth man of the year award is basically like who can go out and get a bucket, who doesn't start. The defensive player of the year conversation, the all NBA defense teams are all really stupid. The conversations that we tend to have about those awards all tend to be really dumb, and it's like occasionally maybe a guard will win it, and if that guard wins it, Marcus Smart doesn't necessarily age all that well. We just ignore what wings do on the defensive side of the ball. It tends to go to rim protectors because that's the only award that they tend to win. They don't really win MVPs all that often. Recent stretch notwithstanding, but yeah, I what's annoying here is that defensive conversation or the lack thereof regarding Anthony Davis. And yet, and Zach, later in that clip would go on to acknowledge the offensive woes and that stuff. But basically what I've figured out over the course of the last couple weeks or so is if you land anywhere in the middle on Anthony Davis, you are getting trampled. You are getting trampled by the mouth breathers on one side of it or the other mouth breathers on the other side of it. And it's maddening to watch somebody who is such a fascinating presence and unique player in NBA history just get pulled apart. I can understand why he says he doesn't give a shit about the conversation about it, because frankly, it's the dumbest conversation in the sport right now. And yet you are going to tell me that to pull up my Slack messages.
Yeah, can I talk now? Because you now that you've monologued and done your high, do you want to come down off the high horse for the rest of the podcast? Because you're calling everybody mouth breathers on both sides.
It's a really far drop,
and trying to frame
really
you're trying to frame yourself as the arbiter of reasonable takes about Anthony Davis. that is arguably the most offensive thing that you just did in that entire monologue, is you pretending to be the voice of reason in the middle. Just right down the middle, Anthony. Always looking for nuance and, just reasonable takes and trying to, hear out both sides of the issues. That's what I think of when I think of you. And I'm sure
that's not what I'm known for.
well.
That's not my brand.
No, believe it or not. Yesterday, the fact that last night you were tweeting about this. You're like, oh, this is a great clip from Zach. It's crazy how we can't acknowledge both sides of this, whatever. This was like 3 hours after I had to mute the Silver Screen and Roll Slack while I was out at Universal Studios Hollywood, because you decided to start like an Anchorman style brawl in the middle of the day just by being like, Anthony Davis, poof, disappeared. I don't know. I'm not so sure about him as a Lakers star. As being a guy that's part of the future, and you were going after him for his conference finals performance. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think, well, number one, like, I do think that you have a point in the sense, like dropping a little bit of the semi-facetiousness that anger was coming from. Semi. I think that you have a little bit of a point that obviously the Lakers needed more from Anthony Davis offensively in that series. I don't think anyone would really even argue with that. Even like the biggest Anthony Davis defender would probably acknowledge, like, hey, if he had scored a little more or a little more efficiently at times during the Western Conference Finals, maybe we're previewing a Game 5 tonight, at the very least.
Are you sure? Are you sure the most ardent Anthony Davis defender would say that? Because we have some pretty ardent defenders in that Silver Screen and Roll Slack who would not go that far.
Yeah, I do think that most people would acknowledge that he does need to be better offensively. And like, I don't want to make the whole show about the SSR Slack. I just use it as an example as like, this is why you drive me crazy, is you try to claim that, you're like trying to have these reasonable conversations, whatever, when you regularly, just try to start a fist fight over, takes that you don't want to unleash on Twitter. And so, like, I think, yes, Anthony Davis needed to be better offensively in the conference finals. Like, in my mind, like that, or at the very least, it certainly would have been really helpful to the Lakers, I don't know, maybe if they get some more from like D'Angelo Russell or whatever, like if he's not a complete non-factor, if they get some more sort of performance, like they only lost the series by 24 points total. It wouldn't have taken much to make it even more competitive of a sweep. Again, we have to acknowledge Denver was much better, especially in winning time, all that stuff, not trying to take away from them or say that it was fluky. But if the Lakers would have gotten a little more from basically anyone else, they would have made this a much more competitive series, including Anthony Davis. And so I don't want to minimize that as a real thing. I just think that, I think that we can both acknowledge that, hey, basically more was asked of him on defense, considering the personnel around him, than pretty much anyone else in the playoffs this year. And the way that he was able to almost single-handedly turn this Lakers unit into an elite defense is astounding, and is one of the main reasons that they were able to even make it to the conference finals. And this is why the part of the conversation that's like turned to they need a real second star like Kyrie or whatever, like, if you gut the team, or if you like trade, like even trade Anthony Davis stuff, if you trade him for an offensive player, like you're going to be in for a wake-up call on how many holes he was plugging defensively. And so I think the conversation has just been frankly dumb for the most part, which I think is why you wanted to discuss this. But I think we can acknowledge that, like, yes, it would have been good for Anthony Davis to be better offensively, while also acknowledging that he played some of the best playoff defense we've ever seen while playing through a foot that is probably, he's probably going to get surgery on this summer.
Important update here. Quick tangent, but the asshole is asleep.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it.
We are good. We.
I thought you meant you went to take a nap during the pod. I was just going to go solo for the rest.
Actually, during that monologue, I started nodding off. So, no, all right. I am 100% with you on Davis. I routinely say that he is one of the most impactful defensive players I have ever seen, especially when he's engaged.
I think
and it's a matchup
for me. I mean, I'm a little younger than you, but I think for me, he's the most, especially up close watching them regularly.
Yeah, I mean, like Hakeem was insane. Like Hakeem was just, same goes for like David Robinson. That era, like those guys were just capable of having. But this is the thing, though, is that Anthony Davis is that kind of impactful in a completely different era.
Yeah.
where it is a lot more difficult for defensive players to be that kind of impactful, right? Like we see Rudy Gobert, who won like what, back to back? Is it
I
back
think
to
he has
back to back?
3.
Yeah, I
I'm
think he
pretty
went
sure
back.
one of them was back to back. Yeah, but I believe he has 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards.
Yeah, and then we see him in the postseason just become unplayable, and some of that is because like he doesn't have a single offensive skill, he doesn't take advantage of switches and stuff, and he can't finish inside, and I don't know if I've ever seen him catch a pass cleanly, and like that's part of why like Gobert gets played off of the court, but also in the playoffs, you have these insanely talented guards and these wild modern offenses that like pick these bigs apart. And Davis can continue to like his impact actually gets greater in the playoffs when he can be fully engaged and he doesn't have to worry about that game being 1 of 82, right? And I think that's insane what he's able to do there. And yet I do have questions about the post LeBron James era if AD is the cornerstone of your franchise. We saw that with him in New Orleans, right? We saw how that went. And look, that New Orleans franchise was a freaking disaster while he was there. And holding that specifically against AD is, unfair. The definition of unfair, because
It's not his fault that their big addition to augment him was giving a gigantic contract to Omir Ashik.
yeah. Well, it not only that, but like, remember when they bragged about finally getting a training staff for the NBA team?
They got a training staff just for the NBA team. They were
Yeah.
no longer sharing with the Saints.
It's like a
AD
big
wants
release
treatment,
that
he doesn't have to figure out when Drew Brees' appointment is.
Yeah, Saints fans all over the place kept on wondering throughout his tenure there. Hey, like, are you just embezzling Hornets funds to continue to pay more for Saints stuff? Because the Saints were really effing good during that time, and the Hornets were just kind of mired in mediocrity, despite having this kind of unique presence. But I also think, though, he does kind of come and go offensively, and more frustratingly is the way that he comes and goes. Where at this stage of his career, he really seems to be lacking that athletic explosiveness that we saw from him in the first year that he was a Laker, right? And yeah, that was 4 years ago, and that's worth pointing out. But that was when it's a big difference when you're going from 30 and when we saw him that kind of athletic the last time was 26 versus like what we're seeing from LeBron at 38 versus compared to 34, right? Or 34 even compared to 30. Is that like we still should be in Anthony Davis's athletic prime, and some of the lower body injuries are going to rob him of some of that athleticism, but it's still wild. Like, when was the last time, Harrison, and I've asked this to multiple guests on the show, multiple people, I tweeted it out, and I've asked multiple people around the league, when was the last time you can remember an Anthony Davis dunk where his armpits were at the rim, where it almost looked like he was looking down at the rim?
Okay, I thought that you were going to say last Anthony Davis dunk. I was like, I'm pretty sure he had a few.
No.
This year. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too far. I don't. If you.
But just like how many of his dunks now are just like kind of like rim grazers, Like and he's doing the bare minimum to get the ball over the rim to dunk it, and his and ones, I'd have to look, but his and ones feel like they're down at this stage compared to, and certainly kept going down over the course of the playoffs, right? That kind of stuff, like that really matters with a player like AD, and all AD needs to be. It's like the opposite, right? With Steph, where Steph was so brilliant offensively that all you needed from him was to be like league average on defense, or you just needed him to compete, or not
just
actively
like not actively horrific. You just needed him to be like just the guy that at least if you hunted him, there were some possessions where he would come up with a win. It wasn't going to be an automatic score.
Exactly. So I just
and he has become that, to his credit.
Well, yeah, but like it's the comes and goes things, right? Where in aggregate, absolutely, you're absolutely correct that AD is a more than.
Oh, I meant Steph.
Oh yeah, okay,
no.
Yeah, but like for AD on offense, he's become a more than better than league average offensive player, right? Like he's clearly more than that in aggregate. But when he doesn't have it, when he isn't, fully engaged, especially on that side of the court, and some of that is because of how hard he's working on defense, and that's completely fair to bring up. But when he isn't fully engaged on that side of the court, he is actively detrimental to your offense. He doesn't space the floor. He's not looking to get, to the free throw line. He's just kind of out there, and he's kind of taking up space. And for a player of his talent level, that's what drives me crazy. Is that like he should never just be taking up space.
I agree with that, and the caveats that I will add, and one of them I'm sort of struggling with, because on one hand, I want to acknowledge, the fact that he was clearly hurt. He's been playing hurt since he came back. Like this is not something, again, he had the several weeks off, but this was a stress reaction that it wasn't going to heal either like without surgery or without like significant time off the foot and stuff like that. And so I want to acknowledge that he was playing through probably some real discomfort. So, but again, I don't want to use that to make an excuse for him. I just want to acknowledge that reality. And I also want to acknowledge the reality that just
everybody is also playing with stuff like that, by the way.
Maybe not to that degree and in your foot, but everybody has some sorts of nicks and knacks by the postseason. I agree with that. And the other thing too, is I just think that historically, when we're looking back sort of at these playoff runs, or especially the last couple of years, like, is it at this point reasonable to expect Anthony Davis to go into the postseason fully healthy? Like that's something we've only seen once during his entire Lakers career, where
the Lakers won a title that year.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, we can acknowledge that, hey, maybe that's just not going to happen. And that's something that is just like not going to be the case. Maybe this isn't just all freak luck, or maybe that kind of freak bad luck has built up into some real sort of deficiencies where he's going to be more prone to these types of things because of the ones that he's had in the past. But again, I'm not a doctor, and there's no way you're not a doctor, and almost none of the people listening to this are doctors, although congrats to you if you are. I'm sure that you make a lot more money than I do, and maybe you can answer this for us. But I think we're just not going to know the answer of whether or not he can stay healthy throughout an entire postseason. So you almost have to put that to the side. That's something that the Lakers, with their medical staff, with their front office, like they have to sort of evaluate that as they're continuing to decide, how are you going to build this team, and how are you going to build it around, like, who are you going to build it around? And especially, when LeBron James retires at some point, I don't think that's going to be this summer, spoiler alert, but I at some point he will. And will the Lakers continue to build around AD? I don't know. And so, I just wanted to acknowledge all that up front really quick. But to your point about he can't just disappear offensively, whether he's healthy or not, or like if he's out there, they need him to be more than he was, this playoff run. I agree with that. But I also think that even you, as someone who wants to acknowledge the defense stuff, might be minimizing just how much he was being asked to do and how much energy he was being asked to exert defensively to prop up this specific roster. Like, this was not a good defensive roster. Name the plus defenders that AD was playing with during the course of this playoff run. Like, overall plus defenders over the course of the run. Like, probably Austin. Vando was a plus defensively overall.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had his drawbacks on the other
LeBron,
end.
right? Like,
was LeBron a plus defender during the whole playoff run? I would say that he gave up on that end more than he stopped.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far.
I think overall, LeBron was obviously a massive positive for the playoff run. But I'm talking about just defensively in terms of what AD is being asked to do and the amount of holes that he's being asked to cover. How many times do we see LeBron get back cut and just like point and be like, hey, like,
or just like give up a wide open corner three?
Like, yeah, like LeBron had his chase down blocks. He definitely played harder on defense than he did during the regular season, but he's still not like, he's not prime LeBron on that end anymore. It's not reasonable to expect him to be at 38. Like, I would say he was probably a minus defender over the course of the playoffs, like in aggregate.
Yeah, I mean,
so like, who are the plus defenders? There's so many holes for teams to attack, and the Lakers were smart in the way that they tried to funnel guys.
Oh, Schroeder, I think was a plus defender.
Schroeder, I missed. Yeah, genuinely positive, impactful defender.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said,
easily in the first round, somehow in AD list lineups at points.
Yeah,
Actually, we can't even credit AD for that. Like, nobody could have covered that. Even Darvin knew. He's like, not even AD can cover up for this. Let's just see if he hits some threes. Like, Rui, good luck.
I think that's true. That's correct. And also, the thing about
And they were
defense.
so you're acknowledging that's correct. They were the #1 defense in the playoffs, despite that, with like 3+ defenders.
Up
And
until
there are
this
probably
last
people
series,
that would argue Austin wasn't a plus defender during the playoffs. I disagree with them, but I think overall he was a plus.
right? But like, all right, the first two series, there is nothing that I can say to retort that. Right? There is nothing at all that I can say to counter all of those points. The third series, though, that elite defense fell off of a cliff, and like some of that is because Denver is just that good.
Yeah.
Like some of that is just because like Jamal Murray went freaking supernova, and you had
like, there were points where especially that fourth quarter of game 2 where the Lakers were playing like I thought they were playing good defense on Jamal Murray for the most part. There were obviously a couple like maybe like picks they went like over that or went under that they shouldn't have and stuff like that. But he was just like it was truly a tip your fedora game to Jamal Murray because there was nothing you could do. Like they were on him and he just was like Steph but better for a quarter.
Yeah, I called him Jamal Curry. Like it was wild to see like what he was doing. But also
like if Andrew Wiggins is like Maple Jordan. Like I think like Murray might be Maple Curry. Like he's poutine Curry.
Right. Yeah. But like I think though, while we can credit Denver in what they're capable of offensively, I didn't feel like AD specifically was as impactful. He wasn't flying all over the court, and part of that is because
I
like
agree with you.
Denver's offense, like it really kind of felt like how in those cartoons, like when a boat like springs a leak and you see like the water like gushing like just like straight up like some kind of geyser, and then like the main character there will plug that geyser, and then another one will pop up, and then the main character will plug that one, and then they'll use like a toe for another one, and then a toe, and then eventually they just kind of look at it and they're like, I don't know what to do now, right? Yeah. Like eventually so many geysers pop up that like you're just kind of screwed, and that's essentially what Denver does to you on offense is you plug the first one with Jokic. You first try to plug that one up with Jokic, and you're using so much energy to try to like limit his offensive impact. And then out of nowhere, Jamal Murray starts nailing shots, and it's like, oh, there's another guy. So I got to try to figure that one out. And then they rotate the ball over to Michael Porter Jr. in the corner, wide open for three. And like, oh shit! All right, here we go.
Yeah,
I'm onto a toe, and it's just.
And then all of a sudden, playoff KCP is wide open.
Right? Yeah, playoff KCP.
Like
in game 4, Aaron Gordon made like 3 or 4 threes too. Yeah. Like it's just. They are like
again. The Aaron Gordon ones were just like it was like a tip your cap. It's like I don't know what the Lakers were supposed to do there. That's
you're
the
out
guy
of extremities.
You're supposed to give up the threes to. He just made them. Like congrats to him.
You're literally out of you're out of like you put one finger there, you put one finger over there, you put one finger over there, and like you can't use your face. Like you can't put your mouth over the geyser.
At one point, we were watching Game 4 together because she wasn't at work, and like at one point she was arguing to ball deny MPJ. Jamal Murray and Jokic, and I'm like, that's just not. You can't. Like, she's like, why are they still letting them get the ball? I'm like, you can't deny all of them. Like,
yeah, like Jen kept on saying like because it was just like wide open shot after wide open shot after wide open shot.
Just try harder. And so she'd be on your side on the AD debate. It's like just be there,
But like all that said, I didn't feel like AD was as engaged. Like and like the thing with AD is he takes everything really hard, right? There was the report from Chris Haynes that he was like at his locker for 45 minutes, right? When there's the report from David Beneman
when like it just repeatedly like I can't believe this.
He's just sitting there in his locker like fucking Aaron Gordon. You fucking kidding me?
Yeah, and like LeBron walks over to him and he's like, "You all right, dude?" And he's like, and I think AD just said he's like, "I just can't believe this." Like,
have you seen his shot? Like, look at his form. The ball goes in.
Yeah, he was looking at Aaron Gordon's box score. That was what it was. He was like, it was Jimmy Butler with the stat sheet. It was like, what?
Hold on. But also, like the reason I put up I bring up him taking things hard is you actually see it on the court on the defensive side of the ball, especially where somebody
You can see
doesn't
he
make it.
definitely is an expressive body language guy. Yeah.
Yeah, on defense especially. And actually one of my favorite moments of the postseason, like one of the moments that I thought like, oh shit, we're getting a special AD game. D'Angelo Russell took an open jumper at the end of a quarter, or a jumper at the end of a quarter, and AD had position inside that if Russell does that thing where you like go up like you're going to shoot it and you just kind of zip it back, you zip it underneath, that AD would have had a dunk. And like at the end of that quarter, AD's like yelling at him, like, yo,
Yeah.
I'm hello, And I was like, hell yeah. That's what I want, right? It was the
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio thing, like, oh my God, I
There
see
you go.
it.
Yeah.
There it is. And that's the kind of stuff that like I want more of. And I know that like asking AD to be Shaq or asking AD to be Kobe or asking him to be LeBron, it's just like unfair because he's not those people. And yet like what made those guys as special as they are those attributes. So you need some of it, right? I'm not
Yeah,
expecting
and so
him to be all of that, but like it's occasionally crack a skull if he isn't getting the ball inside. Like that's something that we can. While I think two things can be true at once. We have to acknowledge now at this point that like at this stage of his career, he's probably not just going to magically develop those attributes, but also you can point out that he doesn't have them.
This is for sure. And I think that's totally fair. And I think this is the fourth year in a row where, we've gotten stories during training camp about how, LeBron is pushing more leadership duties to AD and AD's going to take on a more active, leadership role. And we're going to get the same stories next training camp, like just be ready for it. We're going to get some comments about how AD, taking on, and like, that's just, again, like I don't doubt that he tries. I just think he's not naturally that guy where he's going to be cracking skulls if D'Lo is not actually assisting him instead of attempting to Kobe assist him, and set him up with
Get
those.
the rebound. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, D'Lo threw up. If we're being charitable, he threw up a lot of Kobe assists in the Western Conference Finals. A lot of
they just went
do
unfinished.
Potential assists. D'Lo led the conference finals in potential Kobe assists. Guys just didn't get the offensive rebounds to put them back.
It's really not Russell's fault.
They were there for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully expect someone on TV to blame Anthony Davis for that, in tomorrow's segment after listening to this definitive conversation. So I agree with you there that I think at this point, like, we just cannot expect him to be that guy. I think to me, maybe the fairest point that you've made during sort of all of these discussions that we've had both on this show and over the last 24 hours is sort of the idea that, you can't, like, you need your stars to not be that out of gas by the conference finals, or you're just not going to win. It's like, yes, we can acknowledge, like, yes, he was clearly out of gas. Like, you could see it in the conference finals. I agree with you. He was not as impactful defensively. Some of that is due to Denver. Some of that was like, he just looked cooked. Like, I think his legs, I think, were just done. He just did not appear. How many possessions did we see him just like float to the corner and stand there? At times, like that's something that AD does when he is just gassed and, he's got his hands on his knees. Like, he was just out of it. I think that the amount he was asked to do defensively through the first two rounds, combined with the threat of Denver being the hardest offense to play against that they've hit so far at exactly the time when he was out of energy, was a bad combination. And I still thought he was mostly okay defensively this series. He just wasn't destroyer of worlds Anthony Davis defensively in this series. And he just, like, after game one, he didn't really have anything left for offense. And so I think maybe the fairest criticism that you can make, and I don't even know how fair this is for this run because he was dealing with that foot injury that we won't know the full extent of, but I think, he, I think, needs to become an elite conditioning guy. If he is going to play this style and he's going to play, the Lakers are going to be asking this much of him defensively. They need him to be in elite shape to where he is not getting as out of gas as quickly from the ask on him. And part of that, I think that losing weight this year helped. I think that was something where, getting back down to sort of the more svelte AD to play center versus the weight that he had bulked up with the 2 years previously. I think that was the right call. And I think, maybe with an off season, depending on if he does end up having this foot surgery or not, or if he just decides to let it heal, maybe he comes into camp next year in just elite shape. And that's sort of the thing that I would like to see it more so of, where you can have more faith that he's going to make it through the whole postseason run because he's just not getting tired,
Yeah.
Like
Well,
if Jokic,
and also,
again, Jokic does not have the defensive ask that AD does, but if he can carry around like that and the whole entire semi-truck body, like around the court, like AD can get in better wind conditioning, you know?
like I would love to find out. And they do track
AD should
this.
just spend the whole offseason in Denver. Just train there. He'll be in the best shape of his life, you know?
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
I remember this was back when I was actually in shape. Back when I was like an athlete, coming out of high school, and I was thinking about playing in in the womb. Yeah. When I was coming out of high school and I was thinking about playing at Fullerton, my family back then used to take trips up to Tahoe, and
oh yeah, the air is it's not Denver.
Oh my God,
a little
dude.
thinner up there. Yeah.
So I remember the resort that we used to stay at was like this like cabin resort, and it had this like trail that ran along the lake, and it, you know, from start to finish was a mile. So I would run it back and forth. Like the first morning that we got there one night in the evening, hung out that evening, had dinner and stuff, woke up the next morning, and I was going to run it back and forth 3 times for 6 total miles, right? And I remember like running it. As I was running it, I was like, man, this feels amazing, right? Like I'm there by the lake. It's cool, nice, beautiful breeze, well shaded. And I'm like, this is just, why can't I always run like this? I was like timing myself, and I was running like, 5:30 miles. It was just insane. And then I finished my run, and I got back to the cabin and felt physically ill. Like I could not do anything for the next 12 hours, I think it was what it was. And yeah, it does. Like working out at that elevation, I'm not going to say it would be the worst thing for AD. But anyway.
All right, team plane should have left him there. You heard it here first on the Lakers Lounge,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
he's not going to
be ready for next season.
He says he's not going to, he doesn't normally do anything for like the first few months, right?
Yeah.
And look, man, he does need to rest and recover.
No, yeah, he definitely needs to rest. Yeah, I do not think that the journey to elite conditioning should start this week.
Right now.
Yeah.
But I do think though that like you mentioned the weight and the explosiveness and like it is, dude, go back and watch, the first game that he played for the Lakers.
Yeah.
And the attempts at the rim that he was having there, and the way that he was flying around on defense. And it was just like, holy shit, And then, you look at him in the bubble and like some of the bubble stuff, and I think it is fair at this point to bring it up. He was just like shooting out of his mind in the bubble. And now with multiple years since then,
every team played in the same conditions, Anthony. And
yeah, but some guys like, so essentially, like my theory on that is that like the Lakers
guys have random hot shooting stretches every playoffs.
Oh yeah, totally.
I'm serious.
You're right.
In 2009, like it's a smaller sample size. Sometimes guys just get hot.
Well, Trevor Ariza's shooting streaks all tended to like coincide with his contract.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I mean. Sometimes you got good timing.
Sometimes there's just no explanation whatsoever. But like I my theory then, like it's not even worth going into it, but like my theory then was that like that Lakers team was actually hurting for shooting all year. And if like everybody's shooting improved just a little bit, like elite shooting teams becoming more elite shooting teams doesn't affect their identity. But a bad shooting team becoming a mediocre to okay shooting team, that does affect, like, has huge ramifications for what you're doing. That doesn't mean that I think that there's any kind of asterisk on that. Everybody was playing in those circumstances. And at the end of the day, like,
teams didn't shoot so well against the Lakers, Anthony.
Right. Like building a balanced roster and having an elite defensive team that then like learns how to shoot. It's kind of like the scene from Happy Gilmore, right? Happy learned how to putt, like it's just, but anyway, I just think regarding AD's weight, and this is something that I honestly think like we could talk about whether the Lakers want to use D'Angelo Russell's impending contract in a sign and trade, or if they want to move Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba for a $26-ish million player, if they want to draft somebody with the 17th pick, or if they want to move that 17th pick on draft day, like all of that stuff, kind of not nearly as important as is AD going to get in shape. is AD gonna lose some weight and look even more svelte, like you mentioned earlier? And like it's not just the explosiveness too. As you get older, you need as little weight on your joints as possible. I could speak to this specifically, man. Like this thing, like I look like like this hoodie that I'm wearing. I just I look like some kind of weird. What are those characters from Star Wars? Right, those things that you wear
the
hood?
Jawas.
Jawas. I look like Jawa the Hutt. And so but like my doctor, I've had foot problems basically since I turned 34, I think, maybe even earlier than that. And my doctor has said, I haven't listened, but my doctor has said, just lose weight, and all of those joints and bones in there that have to carry that weight will feel significantly better. And like, yeah.
And you're like, what does he know?
Yeah. I go to Jen, like, what are the guys? This
Sounds
guy
like
know.
you
Jen's
need
like,
the LeBron
please.
James of feet, Anthony. That's what I'm hearing. All these guys are giving you like medical prognoses you don't like. You need the LeBron James of feet. Sounds like it's time for you to head to Germany.
My approach has basically been like every opportunity to spend time in water, do that.
Yeah. What did Jen get her doctorate for? You know, if she's not going to be able to heal you, what's the point?
Yeah, right. Like, you always want to get second opinions when you don't like the first opinion. I'm just I've been going opinion by opinion by opinion by opinion, looking for the doctor who says like, no, actually it's okay to be obese. Somehow I don't think I'm going to find that person. But yeah, I really think, and we kind of have to wrap this up. But when we talk about AD, I just get so annoyed because he really is this like super fascinating player, man. Like he's so unique. His ability to play defense the way he does. When he looks at his best, he's this like pterodactyl that flies all over the place and absolutely wrecks modern offenses in an era where we just keep seeing record after record after record get broken for most efficient offense of all time. And he'll just go out there, like what he did to the Warriors was insane. The Warriors, like, they are synonymous with greatness on offense. And he was just like, no, not this time. Not for these 6 games.
Good luck, guys.
Yeah, right. And what Memphis has done. They have looked so good at portions of their season that John Morant has said, nope, we're good in the West. And AD's like, are you sure about that? Because you aren't going to get anything anywhere near the rim in this series. And eventually, John Morant, one of the most exciting attackers of the basket that the league has going for it right now, was shooting 15-foot floaters because he wanted nothing to do with AD. And so like we can acknowledge that. But then I think we also have to acknowledge in a series like he just played against Jokic, and people are like, well, he's not the 2-time MVP. Why not, man? Like why can't he be at that? Why are we lowering the bar of expectations to where we're like, well, he's just not that good. Okay, but you're kind of telling on yourself if that's your reaction to this last series.
Yeah, I
so
think
like
it's
somewhere
okay
in
to
the
say
middle
that,
there.
Hey, I'd like him to be closer to that 2-time MVP level. Like I'd like him to be the guy that was an MVP betting favorite going into 2020. Yeah, it was 2020-21 that season where, he had just come off and in retrospect, that was a completely idiotic, prediction.
So stupid.
That, given what we've known
He finished
about
the
AD's,
season like a week before.
Yeah, like a week before. It's like, well, he's already in playoff shape. Yeah. I don't know. He's like, oops, turns out he was tired, from that playoff run, which that one was a little more understandable, the fatigue there. I think everybody was a little more willing to forgive that. I agree with you. I think that there's no reason that he can't be in that conversation. Like his talent is at that level. And so, again, but at this point, I just don't know if I expect that. So,
but
maybe that's the end of the Anthony Davis conversation.
Isn't it?
Like I think that he can be great. I think that he's better than he gets credit for, but I'm also not going to predict that he's going to, come back next summer in the best shape of his life, next offseason in the best shape of his life. And, like looking like an MVP out of the gate, because he is a guy that I think would prefer to pace himself through the regular season to try and reach that level when it matters most. And hey, like at the same time, if that works out and he is able to reach those physical peaks and he's able to make it through the regular season healthy, Maybe that'll work out. We just saw the Lakers go from the 7th seed to the Western Conference Finals. Maybe the regular season doesn't matter all that much.
Do you think we have 5 minutes? Do you think the Lakers bring in a center?
I actually would
start
sort
next
of
to AD
like them
this year?
to, just because if we're talking about like him losing weight, him getting in like this greatest conditioning ever, like if they're gonna have a Jokic out there, like I would like one more big body to kind of be able to be sturdy on him. And even if, again, like I'm talking 2020 like Dwight style, not somebody that's going to shut him down, just somebody who is big enough to stop him so that AD can come over as a help defender. We saw LeBron and Rui were able to do it. This should not be an impossible skill set or type of player to find. We even saw Tristan Thompson to some degree, although he wasn't doing it without AD, with AD on the floor, but we even saw Tristan Thompson to some degree, like able to, at least slow him down for long enough for the help to come type of stuff,
Yeah, the only problem there, though, is that like the offense would really suffer. Like you'd be able to defend there, and then you have two bigs who just kind of bump into each other.
That is the problem, and that's going to be the perpetual thing. And so, maybe that's just not reasonable. Maybe it's like, time for Rui to get an even better, lower body shape.
Yeah, well, there's that. I just think like I agree with you. Bringing in somebody like that as a pitch to throw in that matchup makes some sense. But yeah, like, you got to be careful about how you allocate those resources, because if you
I'm saying on, like, the vet minimum, you find, I'm certainly, I'm not arguing for the Lakers to spend major resources on this, or maybe, you trade Mo Bamba for somebody that is at that level.
Or you see if Mo Bamba is that guy.
I'm going to predict that is not going to be the case in Los Angeles.
I don't think so either. His his contract is too valuable. Like the fact that some team looking to shed salary can trade for him and immediately waive him. Like I think the Mo Bamba tenure in LA is probably over.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it. Perfect timing also, because the little asshole just woke up. So
nice.
Fantastic. Great. There's my misfortune of the week.
Yeah.
my son is awake.
Up.
This does end the definitive Anthony Davis conversation, though. So any other further conversations from this point, you send a tweet. If there's anything, if I see anything on Substack, anything on any other podcast,
no more Anthony Davis takes. We're done. They're all here.
Yeah, you are anybody in Slack. If anybody in Slack says anything and doesn't listen to this episode, we're fighting anyway. But on top of that, we are fighting legally as well.
Anthony, the only man who refuses to ever read any of his friends or coworkers' work, but then gets mad when they don't listen to his podcast.
Fair.